Probate disasters. I'm Deric Rangell, certified probate specialist for over 30 years. And upcoming segments, we're going to talk about some things that happened in probate, personal experiences of mine, what went wrong, how did it nearly wreck the probate, and what I did about it to resolve the matter and deliver another good outcome for my clients who faced a really steep uphill battle on resolving a transaction. And the other thing I want to do is, if someone out there, a real estate agent or whatever, has a story that affected them, something that was totally unanticipated and just turned into a train wreck, and you solved it, I would love to sit there and have you share your story and your outcome, because this kind of stuff makes the space better. The probate space is complicated. Because it's complicated, there's a lot of things that are just so nuanced that if you don't have the experience in dealing with these things, you miss them, and then the mistakes get made, and it ultimately ends up costing the estate. And it's not that somebody necessarily did something terribly wrong, but typically when mistakes get made, there's a cost to pay for them. It usually comes out in a financial form with the estate losing some money, unfortunately. So the important thing is when you do probate, that you're working with someone who's got the capacity and the wherewithal to handle the adversity that can come up during a probate. And so in speaking about these kinds of things, hopefully we can help people take their vetting process of hiring a realtor if they have a probate they need to sell, for a probate property they need to sell on behalf of the estate. Hopefully this will give you insight as to what kind of person you ought to be looking for, because these problems can arise at any economic level, and problems are frequent in this space. And so don't get caught up in, well, real estate probate deals are just like any other deals. If you hear people telling you that, they're just speaking to their inexperience and ignorance about the subject. And when you hear these stories that we're going to share with you, you will see why. So let's get going. The first one I'm going to talk about is a property that I recently sold in the city of Whittier. I represented the buyer and the seller. And in this particular property, it was 8326 Sanger. On this property, what happened was we had parents die. They had a reverse mortgage. The reverse mortgage was in default. A son, there was basically two sons left in the estate, and they were not getting along. And as they were not getting along, during this time that the parents passed away was right in the early parts of COVID. And so not resolving the matter, having the courts really bog down the probate process as they were during COVID, you ended up with a son who was living with the parents. Unfortunately, he had never lived anywhere else. This was his home since childhood. Never got married, never had kids, never moved out. He was in charge of the estate. Probably wasn't the best suited to do that, but he petitioned. He had standing. Parents didn't have a will, and so consequently he gets appointed. Realizing, he was, on again, off again, college grad, just for some reason just didn't get distraction in life or a career move. And as a result, people, they get kind of just on a hamster wheel kind of thing. And in this instance, 2 years passed with a defaulted reverse mortgage loan on the property. And the lender was not really pressing the matter because, basically COVID affected everybody during that time. And so I rented this guy close to 2 years after he had already, his parents had filed, a year after he had petitioned. A lot of time had lapsed and he did nothing. His brother was getting frustrated. He hired another attorney. I happened to have known the other attorney that he hired, and I was telling him, this is no joke. She's not going to mess around, and we got to get this property priced. It's got to be priced to sell. So I go over to the property, go check it out, and the property was it was poorly lived in. It was untidy, and it needed a significant amount of clean out, both the inside and the outside. And so I've been talking to this client for the better part of a couple of weeks. And then he gets a call from his brother, and his brother was threatening to pursue legal action because he wanted to end up buying the property because his brother was comfortably living, not paying any rent. And that was the bad situation there. So his brother leaned on him a little bit, and I just said, you're going to have some problems if you don't sit there and take this seriously. And you have to start taking some actions that are showing that you're administering. Because alternatively, your lack of administering and having not moved the ball at all for the last year and a half are going to at some point show up where you're basically breaching your fiduciary duty to move the estate forward and settle it. So he paid careful attention to what I was telling him, conversed back with his attorneys, which is a law firm who I've done a good amount of business with in the past. And so we get the property on the market, we get it listed. And as I'm going there, I hire a cleanup crew to deal with the yard. We were having the trash out crew come out and take out all the debris that was trashed out. Well, spent about $5,000, everything in terms of cleaning out the inside, cleaning out the outside. And this is common. It's often that we end up with homes like this where we have to advance the estate money because they don't have any. So as we go along, we're doing this. I noticed there's a hearse in the neighbor's yard next door. And I didn't think anything of it when I first saw it. I was like, okay, this is what they do, man. Someone's got to be a hearse driver. And so I didn't really register. I didn't spend any time looking at it because I was dealing with my client and the situation at his property. So after we get it cleaned up, get some buyer traffic, we get it sold fairly quickly to a wholesaler. And as we're going along, wholesaler comes over, they bring their fake people like wholesalers do. It's like, oh, this is my contractor. And they try to act like they're actually going to do an inspection, but they're bringing the up-leg buyers that they're trying to flip the contract to. So that's kind of what happened. And I tell the guy, he's like, "Oh, this is my contractor." The guy's driving a Tesla. It's like, wow, I've never seen a contractor drive a Tesla. And I would go up and I intentionally wanted to shake his hand, and he had the smoothest hands of a contractor I've ever experienced shaking hands with. And then another person subsequently comes out, supposed to be the designer, and she looked like she just literally walked off of a chef's job in the back of the kitchen and came in, and I was like, wow, this doesn't look right. But, we already had an accepted offer, and they were apparently doing their due diligence. So they go outside the property, and they take a look at everything. And as I'm sitting in the front yard looking, I took a look in the hearse again. I noticed the door was open, and I'm thinking to myself, well, okay. And then I looked a little closer and I see a foot. I was like, okay, this kind of got weird. And there was a person inside the hearse who was very much alive. And he was living in it. Apparently this person had a past, and his parents just, for whatever reason, didn't want him residing in their home because of the trouble he was probably bringing them. But they were allowing him to live in this hearse right next to the home I was selling. And so we come out of the property, and next thing you know, we're smelling marijuana. It's like, wow, now we have a person in the hearse who's getting high, and we're trying to sell a property, and this guy is trying to flip their contract, and they're lying to me about who these people are, and it's like, I don't care, I know they're not there, but you're still in the deal. And it was time to remove contingencies. And so this wholesaler's like, I don't know if you noticed that person in the home. Well, which home are you talking about? Well, the neighbor. Which neighbor? Well, the one with the hearse. Like, why didn't you just say that? So I proceeded to listen further, and they said, well, that's kind of creepy that someone's living in a car in a hearse next to a home that we're going to want to rehab. And of course, whether they do or do, that's none of my concern. All we want to do is settle out the price we agreed to. But then they asked for a $20,000 walk back on the price. And I was like, wow. So $20,000 because the guy's sleeping in a hearse next door and doesn't impact your property. Yeah, it's kind of weird. But, people are entitled to do what they want on the property. If he's not breaking any laws, well, then you have to just consider that it's uncomfortable, but it's okay. I can't tell neighbors how to live their lives, especially when they're not breaking the law. And so the reason I bring up this point, train wreck, is, neighbors can impact sales. What goes on in the neighborhood can impact the sale of a property. There are certain things that an agent is required to disclose. And so for me, when we've got time to do our disclosures, my agent visual inspection disclosure, which we're required to do, I noted on the AVID that, that the neighbors have a hearse and that it's lived in by their son. And so they come back and they ask for a $20,000 discount. And that's like, read your paperwork. It was there. And so they tried to grind back, and we just basically said, no, you don't get a $20,000 discount. And we gave them a notice to perform and then a demand to close, at which point they failed and we canceled the escrow. Subsequent buyers come in, they noticed it right out of the gate, and I was up front and I said, yeah, this is the neighbor. The son can't live there. There's an issue with him. Peaceful, no problem. If you want to check out police reports, there's not problems with these neighbors, and there's not problems in this neighborhood. But check it out before you want to. If you want to move on with the offer, check it out before you do so. So they did. Ultimately, they found out. Okay, there's no there. It's just an odd situation. Obviously, no one's going to be a long-term resident living in a vehicle. Because at some point, even parents want their kids to move on, and so we ended up finding a new buyer, got the offer accepted, and ultimately ended up saving this estate $10,000 because we were able to procure a very good offer, and we explained to them the problem that other people were viewing with people next door, and all I suggested to the buyer was really simple. It's like, yeah, when you fix up your home and you're getting ready to sell it, just tell the people who you're talking to about buying it of the situation and let them go look, just like you went and looked. And they'll probably see, it's like, okay, if there's nothing crazy, no violence, nothing dramatic happening in the neighborhood, it'll be okay. Because the homes on both sides, actually the homes on all sides, across the street and adjacent to this property, they were all well-maintained homes. Even the people who had the hearse in the driveway had a really nicely maintained home. And so what are you going to do? Is that enough reason to not buy the home? Or is it really a non-issue? Well, if you handle it right and you tell people up front and they get a chance to see it with their own eyes, with full disclosure, of course, they can see it's like, yeah, okay, so this person is it odd? Yeah. But is it going to change the value of my property when I'm done rehabbing it? And we came to the conclusion that it wasn't. So they decided to close. We had a 2.5-week escrow. And now they are the happy homeowners. I believe they've already fixed up the home and it's in escrow currently. And it could have ended up really bad. But when you have things that you find out that could be material, the moral of the story is share that information with the parties, but have an idea on how to present the information in the right context. Because if you're able to do that, people are going to see for their own eyes and experience with what they can see and witness that it's going to be okay. So this was not really a disaster. It's one that could have been had I not presented the disclosure in the context, and actually I went over the top to inform them, and so that they can see what I was seeing as this is not a big deal. And they agreed, and subsequently they closed in a couple of weeks, and that was a good outcome for this estate. So we're going to come back and have a couple more stories to share in upcoming episodes. But thank you for viewing this. If you have a situation like this that you want to share and talk about, email us. Drop us a line down or give us a call. Reach out to us on our website. If you're interested in probate content, like or follow, or you can even subscribe by clicking the bell. And we'd love to share with you some real life situations that happen in probate and let you know that most of them are solvable if you have the right person working. So until next time, thank you for viewing.